let's jump in. So my name is Garrett Breeze. I'm a show choir arranger based out of Nashville. And tonight we have with us Eric Van Cleave, Brock Keiper, and Robert Allen, who are all fellow arrangers and show choir people. So we're going to be talking tonight about arranging and working with show choir bands and kind of putting everything together. So if any of you have comments or questions you want to throw into the discussion, just go ahead and drop those in the chat and we'll make sure we get to everything before we're done here. But why don't we start with each of you just kind of giving us, you know, the 3-minute version of your life story and how you ended up arranging and how you got sucked into show choir and just sort of what your path was. Eric, why don't we start with you?
Look, I'm the V. We go last. The V's go last. That's why we sit in the back. You never get to go first if you want to, but when it's this, you have to go first. Now, I'm happy to. By the way, thanks for inviting me to be here. I went to Noblesville High School and was in the NHS Singers when I was in high school. So that was a minute ago. And so I thought maybe, how hard could it be? So I went to college and went to Ball State. Chirp, chirp. Are there Ball State people out there? Are they chirping? Went to Ball State. I was on the 5-year plan. It was great. I got my money's worth. And started teaching. And, I think I got started arranging the way a lot of people do. It's like, hey, I want to do that song, but I don't have an arrangement of it. Or I have an arrangement of it and it doesn't fit my group or whatever. And then, you just kind of take it from there. So did that and wrote for a lot of my groups. When I was teaching, I taught at Jefferson High School in Lafayette, Indiana. Go to my YouTube channel. I've got them all lined up there. You can see them in all their glory. Vintage show choir. I've got, not only do I, by the way, have videos that are self-serving for me, of course, but I've got some other vintage, just a nice collection of vintage show choir videos from some really cool people from days gone by. In an event, where was I? Started, you do that. And after a while, I loved teaching, loved every 80-hour week of it. It was great. It was fantastic. And then thought, well, maybe there's something else I'd like to do too. So I stopped doing that and moved to New York and was not going to be an arranger anymore. I was going to go be another thing or something, whatever. And of course, it's expensive to live in New York. So I'd get a call and say, would you do an arrangement? No, I'm not an arranger anymore. But they said, well, I pay you this. Okay, I'll do one more. And then, so here we are. So I did one more and have really enjoyed doing it in many forms since then, not only for show choirs, but I've done some work for stage productions, some full-scale musicals, internet content, do work with amusement parks, theme park show applications, did that for several years. I also spent 5 years, it was sort of a hobby, it was kind of a community volunteer thing really, but I volunteered at a performing arts center in Lafayette, Indiana, and ended up being the executive director for a few years. And that was a blast too. I had to do a lot of cool things I never had to do before that. And now I live in Ann Arbor and I'm doing arranging and working other projects like all of you are, and pivoting it a little bit here and there, but that's the kind of the fun thing. I've always kind of tried to keep, not all my eggs in one basket. So, I'm doing a lot more with video work and internet content building and working on some other shows, for working with another buddy on a Christmas show that was to be this year, but it's going to be next year. He said he might drop in tonight to troll me, so we'll figure out if he did that or not. But so there we are. That's my long and short story.
All right, cool. Robert?
Here we go there. If I can work my technology, I won't be muted while I'm talking. So my name is Robert Allen. I'm from Clinton, Mississippi. So that kind of tells my background a little bit. I got in show choir arranging because similar to Eric, I wanted to do some things that I didn't have. And I was working with another colleague and this person needed some help. And so they were like, hey, will you write some horn parts? I'm a trumpet player by trade. So he said, will you do the horn parts for these piano vocals? And so there you go. The rest was there. My show choir background is I've been involved in this activity for 25 years, and I have been the combo director, show band director, orchestra pit director, whatever you want to call that, for Clinton Attaché for all of that time. And so that's kind of the way I've come to this activity, and I've been very, very fortunate to be around for a long time, and to be around people and hear groups that were just fantastic. And so all of that has really shaped my experience. And Eric's groups and Pete's groups from back there, and Brock's groups now. And I see some more familiar faces, but every time I get to go out to watch show choir, I'm just amazed at the level of education that's happening. And I try to learn something from everybody that's out there. So I also have experience in drum and bugle corps. So I was able to march that and teach that activity, if you're familiar with that. And I've been fortunate to write some music for a few commercials and a couple short films, and have actually two full-length feature movies where I've written the original score. So I have not quit my day job, so don't go looking for those on Netflix. But it's been fun, and I am honored to be a part of this group. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Brock.
I'm Brock Keiper. I live in the Chicago area now, but I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was in show choir from, I think, 6th grade all the way through the end of high school. I was in JV show choir at Jefferson, actually with Pete. And then my family moved across town, and they didn't have open enrollment then. So then I ended up my show choir career at Kennedy, and went to college at Elmhurst College and got a music ed degree. Through the course of getting that degree, I realized that teaching really wasn't what I wanted to do. But I kind of arranged to pay my way through college and just kind of kept going with that. And it's kind of always what I wanted to do. I used to sit down in front of the TV and play show choir videos and plunk it out on my keyboard and just try and figure out what everybody did. When I was younger, I wanted to be Eric Van Cleave when I grew up. I still do, but so I just live in Chicago and arrange half the year, and I direct the show band at Naperville North High School, and that's pretty much the other half of the year. So it works out really well.
Awesome. What gear are you guys using to arrange these days? Are you Finale people, Sibelius people? What's your setup? We'll go backwards this time for Eric. Brock, why don't you start?
I use Sibelius, and it just is like the luck of the draw. J.W. Pepper, the Chicago branch, had a workshop on Sibelius, and I happened to go to it and liked it and started using it. It could have just as easily been a Finale workshop. It wasn't any particular reason I went to that one. Prior to that, I was using like $60 music notation software I bought at Best Buy when I was in high school and still using. But yeah, Sibelius is what I use, and I do all my tracks in Logic.
Do you have any other gear that you rely on? Hardware?
No, not really.
Do you use keyboards to enter in the notes, or are you all?
I don't really use the keyboard to enter in notes in the notation software. I use it a lot for the tracks.
Okay. Robert, what about you? What's your?
Yeah, I'm a Finale user. I came to it when it was a Finale, probably, I don't know, maybe 3.75 or something, and then they quickly jumped to, the year system, Finale 95, and then it went up from there. And so I can use Sibelius. So, but Music XML has made it easy to transfer back and forth. And so if I have clients that want Sibelius, then I can just convert it to that. So I tried to use it once, but once you know one system, it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. I have a MIDI keyboard in my studio. That's I guess you could call it a studio. It's really this room where my chairs are, and but where I use the keyboard to enter the notes. So if it, I'm really pretty fast with that. I'm not a piano player by trade, so I don't use like the hyperscribe feature where you hit record and you play in tempo. I don't do that, but I'm very fast with that. And then I have a Mac Pro, and then if I'm making tracks, then I'll use Logic Pro.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, well, you know, I own them all. I started a long time ago using Encore, which I loved because the great thing about Encore was you could play it in with the inflections, and it would I like to play it in real time. That's just because I love the sound of 4 metronome clicks in my hair all day long. But Encore was able to put the notes on the page like I liked, and it also played it back with inflection. So I thought that was pretty handy. That's Encore is not supported anymore, but I still have a lot of arrangements in that. So I have a couple of computers that still run that. I'm using Sibelius now. I'm just now getting a little, I've used this year to get a little bit better with Sibelius. I didn't really use it that much until I started working with Alfred. I've got some arrangements available from Alfred Music Publishing. Please go there and buy all of them. Thank you. And, you know, if you have 30 kids in your choir, buy 50 because they'll lose them, you know, anyway. I don't know, I was shameless, wasn't it? But nonetheless, I use Sibelius. I'm getting to love it a little bit better. You know, I just took a look at John Hinchy. He has a new course you can get that does a lot of things that have ironed out some really annoying things about make me understand Sibelius a little bit better. So that's relatively new. I use that. And when I'm doing track production, I use Digital Performer often. I'll do that. And I'm in Final Cut Pro every day. Like, so I probably open all of those programs, you know, definitely weekly, you know, and probably, you know, several times a week.
All right, cool. So just to kind of cover the basics here, Brock, if you were teaching somebody brand new and you were explaining to them what's the difference between, you know, just choral arranging in general and show choir arranging, what would you tell them?
Oh gosh, this could be a 3-hour answer. I mean, it's about the show. It's about being showy. It's about being flashy. I don't really feel like there's a huge difference in the like vocal part writing. It's maybe not as stacked as a lot of choral music all the time, but it's all about like, I don't know, the show of it more than choral music. Yes. Does that make sense?
Sure. You want to jump in? Sorry.
I don't think that I would write a choral piece, the vocals for a choral piece, any different than I would the vocals for a show choir piece.
Okay. Robert, do you want to jump in on that as a band person? Like, how do you see it and combining those elements with it?
It's really interesting. So I don't know that I would write the two any differently as far as vocals, but the one thing that I've tried to really harp on, and you know, I came from the band world, so we would get a lot of flack for our band students being in show choir, and so I would say good playing is good playing wherever it is, and good singing is good singing wherever it is, and whatever style it is. So I personally don't approach it differently. I'm not the person that is teaching the singing, but quality is quality. I do agree with the show comment that it's a little bit more about the show. You know, that's kind of like asking us to compare art music versus jazz or something like that. And maybe jazz is not a good example, but are we writing it music for music's sake, or are we just writing it for entertainment? So the biggest thing that you could take away from that is maybe know your audience and maybe know the people that you're writing for, and then you can sort of best tailor what you're doing for that situation.
Well, and to that point, the show choirs do a lot of different styles, including jazz. So that makes a lot of sense to approach it that way. I do want to ask you something. When I encounter somebody who has no idea what show choir is, they're not a music person. One of my, I guess, short explanations is often, well, it's marching band for choir kids, and they kind of go, oh, okay, yeah. Do you think that's a fair comparison as somebody who's been deep on the marching band side of things? Do you think they're parallel? Do you think they're equivalent, or is it a totally different monster?
That's interesting. I think it's all in how you approach it. I know some very fine band directors that run some very fine band programs that are very competitive. And then I know some people that run some programs where it's all about having a good time, but you still are teaching the students good fundamentals, and you're still teaching the students how to make music. And so whatever vessel you choose to do that with is your choice.
Yeah.
I think it's when you get overboard about any one part of it that you sort of lose your true goal, and that's music education and good fundamentals.
Yeah.
I think that like material wise, that has to do with the overarching, what kind of a show is it? Is it a show choir show? Is it, an amusement park show? Is it, what is it, a cruise ship show? Is it a concert choir show? So kind of the overarching, is there a story to tell? That's one question. How is that different? A show choir show structurally different. But I think like technically writing, I want to know as much as I can about who's performing it, what they do, where they're performing it, because that makes a difference. If they're singing and dancing, and they're a group that sings and dances well, that means they're going to be, I think sometimes some people, I've had people say, hey, I thank you for the arrangement. By the way, my pet peeve is to send an arrangement, deliver it, and like in about as much time as it takes to listen to the track, they call back and go, can you, I was like, let me breathe for a second first. But this is only 3 parts. Can you write this 8 parts? I said, absolutely, I can write that in 8 parts. It would be easier than writing in 3 parts that are going to sound like 8. So, I think that's part of the deal, right? And people go, well, I want to challenge my students. Well, that's good, but 8 parts is, you don't often hear 8 parts in the kind of music show choirs are performing. So there's a push here. Are we doing it for educational purposes? Are you trying to get the best show? You're not going to write basses on a low A if they're dancing. Doesn't matter even if they're a cappella. If you're writing a low A for a bass, you're wasting resources. And so I look at that, and you think about how much is it? I like to know who the choreographer is before I write a dance break. I mean, it doesn't mean that they won't work, they won't interchange, but I like to be. I used to write for Paul Gulspig. Paul Gulspig's a guy that used to be a choir director. Loved writing for him. And he would send pictures of, it's a silly story, but I wanted to, he sent a picture of his family at home going, here's how we live, because he joked that I was really trying to customize everything, specifically for him, which was kind of funny, but I really do want to, it makes a difference. Different people have different, particularly if a show choir has a brand. If I know your brand and that's where you want to go, I think you can key into that brand and write that in one way that somebody else, if somebody said, can you write this in the style of blank, for example, if somebody calls me for a vocal jazz piece, I can write a vocal jazz piece. I've done it many, many times. But if you want a vocal jazz piece, I'm probably going to send you to Greg Jaspers or Lee Wilder or, Sarah Zagri, love Sarah Zagri, only because that's sort of what they do. Different people have different niches too, but you try to want to be, so what do you think, different people are good at? I think some people, Jeremy Alfera is a great writer, but we write really differently, which is probably a compliment to him and an insult to me because he's just so musical the way he does it. I can sometimes just listen. You know, there are some songs that tunes that if I arrange it and we all arrange it, it's going to come out about the same, you know. And then there's other times when, you know, you go, you know, do you want this, you know, when you're speaking to your arranger, do you want this, do you want a lift, or do you want something clever and creative? And that's where everybody starts to go, and you can start to mold it into something that makes it more of what you are, and, you know, has the surprises you want, or that the choreographer or the director wants. So there was a ramble for you.
So that's really interesting. That's a really interesting point. What are you guys experiencing the most? Are people pretty much just asking you to lift things like the original, or are they asking you for creative arrangements? Are they wanting you to change things? And if so, like, what's the information you need to make that successful? Like when a director comes to you and says, I want this song, like, what are the questions that you're going to ask them? Rock, what about you?
It depends. I have people who will come to me and just give me a song title, and they just want me to run with it and see what I come up with. And then I have people who will completely lay out the whole arrangement for me to where I'm basically just transcribing it for them and writing some vocal parts. And I'm comfortable with both. I mean, I think the most important thing is I need to know what your group's strengths and weaknesses are, where they sound their best. Like if you have weak sopranos this year, tell me that. If you have strong tenors, tell me that. If you have great trumpets, tell me that. If your band's scary, tell me that. I mean, I feel like that's more important to me than I wanted to start with this and then go into this, and this line needs to be girls and this line needs to be boys, but I'm comfortable working with that as well. It just depends on the group. It depends on, like Eric mentioned, I work with a lot of choreographers and write a lot of stuff for a couple people, and I know what they like. I'm to the point where I know where they like, so they give me less information usually, and then I'll send them a draft, and if there's anything that we need to go back and tweak, but usually it's pretty close from the start. When it's somebody new, there can be a lot more back and forth, and I want a lot more information. And so it just depends on the scenario, and every season I encounter the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with Brock on that. The more information that you can give, the better the scenario is. And I tend to find that if you're writing something for your own group, I mean, you know your own group the best. So you can tell that some of those groups where the director is the arranger, or where the director is really, really, really involved in that process, then the product tends to be a little bit more tailor-made. You know, I'll be honest, I mean, with my group, I haven't had a whole lot of horn players over the years. And there are some groups that are very fortunate. They have huge horn sections with fantastic players. And I haven't been that fortunate. I mean, it'll be spotty, but so I'm not going to write things that are difficult for the trumpets because they can't play it. So now guitars, I had those for days for a while. So you just knowing what you're gonna write for is probably the biggest thing. And I like Brock said, I have people that totally lay the whole thing out, and then I have people that say, hey, run with it. And then there's some really good descriptors in there. And so I think the best thing that directors can do is, you know, put some extra thought into that and then say, this is what we're going to do. I think the time when you get frustrated is when they give you a song title and they say, hey, just run with it. And you're really creative and you're whatever. And they come back and they were like, that's not what we're going for. We didn't mean for it to be Latin, you know, or something like that. Then you got to change the whole thing. So that just, you know, that just wastes a lot of time on a lot of fronts. So the more descriptive that you can get. And I don't mind doing either way. I mean, I don't mind lifting a chart. Of course, that's a whole lot easier than being creative. I mean, I'll just be honest. But if you want that creativity and you want that stuff, then we want to know what your input is and what your group has. So
what's your guys' what's your guys' arranging process? I mean, you've had the conversation with the director, you've got the info about the songs and the shows. When you actually sit down to start working, what do you do?
I just have to, I have to learn it. I have to listen to it and kind of internalize it before I can, because, you know, sometimes people ask you to do things that aren't necessarily tunes you might arrange for something you're doing, but that's what they're doing, and they need this to work. And sometimes, you know, that's a challenge, you know. But I think that, you know, you kind of, I like to listen to it maybe in the car where I can't really do anything but kind of just listen. And, you know, it takes me a minute to figure out, I want to make sure what key is it going to be in? Because that affects everything. So I often will do, you know, get it ripped a little bit and kind of see a kind of a sketch there, and then go to the chorus. Where's the beef? Where's it going to be? Or where's the tofu? I'm a vegan. But you know, where does it need to kill? You know, do we have to? You don't want to have a great, you know, the verse is placed great, but when it gets to the chorus, it's, you know, disappointing. So I spend a lot of time figuring out what key it's in, and then as I get to know it, the tricks and turns and surprises, maybe I'll call somebody and say, you know, this could really work there. We could drop this in. This could kind of freshen this up, you know. So that's what I like. I spend time figuring out what key it's in, because if I don't know that, because any other sketch, you know, sketch a horn line, now the horn line doesn't work anymore. It's too low, or it's too high, or whatever. So that's the money, is figuring out the key for me. And you know what? I've done this before. I've done arrangement all but done, and realized I got it in the wrong key. And I can't. My ego won't let me. My greed would let me send it out, but my ego won't let me send that out. Going, man, that's just a tritone 2, whatever, up or down, you pick. But
yeah, I mean, I agree with Eric. I think probably the key is the number one most important thing. And it, like he said, it dictates where everything goes. In some pop music, the key and the verse sound better or the verse and the chorus sound better in 2 different keys, and that's always fun. So you gotta, I mean, that's the biggest struggle for me. But like Eric said, I like to listen to stuff. The minute I get hired to arrange something, it goes into a playlist, and that playlist is what I'm listening to in the car. And even if it's a tune I'm not gonna arrange for 3 months, it'll be something that I'm constantly listening to, and the ideas are forming in my brain without even like really thinking about it. And so that when I actually sit down to write that chart, it happens much faster.
I kind of follow the same process, and I'll start listening to that tune, and then there's you know, I guess in the early versions of the iPhone, it would, like, what was there was an audio recorder, or like a voice recorder, voice app, or whatever it is now, that after I've listened to that for a while, then I'll just start, you know, sort of singing things into the voice recorder. And those sometimes end up being dance breaks or like introductions or things like that. And then I'm thinking about if it's a tune, like Eric said, maybe something I might not have picked, but the person really likes it, then okay, what can I do to change that, to show choirize the song? Like, I know there's some tempos that I really don't like to work at, you know, and then there's stuff you got to change to make it either have momentum or figure out where it's going to be in the show. If it's a singular song, I mean, some of my clients, I only do one song out of their show, and so the key is important, but sometimes I want to know what's the key before that, what's the key after that, so they can figure out how to go to it. So especially if things are going to be sequenced pretty quickly, if there's a stop and the audience is clapping, then, you know, sometimes their ear can be it won't really matter. But a lot of the shows, that's one trick I learned from being around David Fair, is the keys are going to relate to each other in some way, and there's a transition that's going to take you from this key to this key. So it's just one of my tricks, but I kind of follow that similar pattern as the other two.
So what do you guys do when you're working on a song and you know, there's problems with the key. Like you said, if the verse is the verse is bad in one key, but the chorus is great, you know, do you split the difference? Do you pick one or the other? I think I noticed the same thing happening a lot with the band. Like there's a key that's great for the band and terrible for the vocalist, and vice versa. So what do you do to work out those problems?
You try to not write guitar in E flat, you know.
Right. But I mean,
Can we, you know, can we take that down a half step? That's going to be a toughie. How long do you have for your guitar to retune? That's, you know, you're right, because I'm always thinking that. And sometimes, you know, if it starts to get into an ugly key, I think about who it's going to, you know. If it's somebody that starts their show in August, is going to perform it all year, they got time to look at the, you know, the C flats and stuff. So there you go. But, you know, I try to make it, I try to work it out so that it works, because I want people to go, you know, when they do one of the arrangements, I want the band, sometimes do you guys do this? I leave little notes in the band part, like Phil, like on the drum part, Phil, and then the next one, Phil's big brother, you know, Big Phil, you know, I don't know, whatever. I don't know. What was he talking about? It doesn't matter. There you go. Sorry, interrupted. Keep going.
Oh, that's great. I mean, knowing who you're writing for on that, to put little notes in, you know, you could be like Percy Granger and put those little things in, and, you know, ambiguous instructions.
Does the band ever win in those arguments, or is it always just whatever the vocals need to be?
For me, the band always loses, because that's what I came from. So I can remember being in high school and playing in a bunch of messed up keys, and, you know, you didn't question that when I was in high school. You just took it, and you weren't. He was like, "Well, what do you mean you can't play in that key? Figure it out," you know. And so I kind of went with the singer's rule on that. And so, because there are other creative things that can happen in that process, and I'm sure that'll be another question later, but if your first trumpet can't play that, then a synthesizer sure can. You know, so.
Yeah, I agree. I think it always has to come down to what works best for the choir. And then you just make the band work. And I jokingly tell my kids all the time that you'll graduate from here being able to play in any key. And that's a skill that you're going to leave here with. And then,
you know, there are some groups that have such great bands. You know, there are times when if you know who that band is and you know what they're going to be doing with it, and you know it's a band feature or something, or they're going to be out there. I don't know. Sometimes, I don't know. I love, you know, if I can move the key around so the Barry sax is honking on a low A all day long, I'll do that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I love a low A. I was working with, I forget who it was, and they said, I don't have a low A. And so I play saxophone. I said, give me that horn. Put your heel in the bell and blow. You got a low A, baby. You can get a low A out of that horn. But no, I love a low A, you know, and how good your first trumpet player, really, you know, because that really kind of defines it. But, you know, sometimes the band's the show, you know. I remember saying to Brock's group, I said, oh my God, this group's so good. And the singers are good too. Because you know, sometimes it's like, whoa, you know, you blew my face off, and that's awesome. And some of that comes from, you all know that it's hard to really go out and do some Smash Mouth show choir if your band's not killing it. And sometimes where the money is, I think, I don't know. I'll let those ponies run on the dance break, especially on the closer, to let the band win on that one. I guess maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the things to look for are what? The bass trombone low note, the electric guitar, the Barry sax A, the high note for the tenors, right?
Yeah. Well, mostly the Barry sax though.
No, I agree with you. How do you guys feel about key changes?
I'm bored.
You know, I used to write for Shelley Johnson at DeKalb when Shelley Johnson was at DeKalb, and I always joked that I charged by the key change. She'd send it back. Can you get another key change in? I said, there's no more key changes left. We've done the circle of fifths. We're dizzy.
I guess what I'm really asking is how many can you get away with, right? If a verse and a chorus are in bad keys for each other, can't you just change?
You could probably get away with, a handful. If you're Barry Manilow or like Mac the Knife, but if you're not, then I don't know. Sometimes it gets a little annoying, but
it goes back to the show, right? And to the style, if it makes sense.
Yeah. In a particular song, it can make or break a song that's really repetitive. But
so what
it should be, then it should be.
So what are some pitfalls for new arrangers? What are some things to look out for that you maybe wouldn't think of when you're first starting out? What are some mistakes you see frequently?
Trying to write everything in the original key, not realizing that you can change the key to whatever you want is one. Maybe not having sopranos sing above the staff the entire song is another. Low is just as bad. I don't remember who mentioned, but the bass is on a low A. I mean, you can't write bass that's too far below the staff for show choir. You're never going to hear it, and then you're just wasting their time.
It's a waste of resources. Yeah, not putting every trick into every song. I think
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I came across one of those little quote things. I'm the first person to drop a quote on this, but I came across one of those quotes a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to save it for this. And it was something about simplicity. I can remember being in college, and you're going for part writing, and my part writing instructor was like, "Follow the keep it simple, stupid method." And I've seen some charts out there that just had this vast quantity of notes, and the art is making something happen with, less is more. So it's like both of the guys have said, are you really going to hear those 8 parts? If you can't hear those 8 parts, then why are they there? If you can't hear, if you got a full alto section back there, but you also have 5 trumpets, then why, you probably would stay away from 5-part saxophones, because you're probably not going to hear that. So if it's there, it's just, I don't know. I follow that simple method a little bit more than I do. So that might be one. The key change thing, my biggest thing when I tell people is, don't get married to the way the song sounds on the original recording. Don't get married to the tempo. Definitely don't get married to the key or even the style. And that might have come from, or the rhythm of things. Sometimes the rhythm of the vocals are just too difficult. And so I could spend forever writing that exact rhythm out, but you would spend more time learning the rhythm to sing than you would learning to make music. And so it's okay to change rhythms. It's okay to change, add measures. It's okay to do these things. And because that's arranging, is moving the stuff around rather than transcribing. So don't get married to the way it sounds in the original recording. And I think because a lot of songs can be sped up and they're show choir ready. All you do is bump them up 20 clicks and they're ready to go. But at their current tempo, they might not work. So
yeah, I think go ahead,
Eric.
I think that editing, like if one verse is almost but not quite like the second verse, and the nuances are never going to be heard, it's just bad editing. It's like now they have to remember that. Try to make things, you're not trying to make everything sound exactly alike, but if it's something like at the first verse, the rhythm is da 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 da, and the second time it's da 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 da, but it's the same figure, whatever. And then we're trying to change up the little nuances. Those are never going to matter in the context that you're presenting that work. I think that's also, and I think maybe because a lot of people that say, I want to grow up and be a show choir director. No, that's great. want to be a show choir arranger. It's like, no, just be an arranger and then do show choir stuff. You know, and I understand maybe that's where you're starting, but don't think of yourself as just a show choir arranger. You know, think of yourself, I mean, the better choreographers are really not show choir choreographers. The better choreographers are choreographers, you know, many that way. You know, so, but I think a lot of them come from being a vocalist. And so when you're a vocalist and now you have to write band parts, I think the biggest mistake people, new arrangers make is they write the band parts too thick. If you look at the score and there's a lot of whole notes, they're covering up, they're covering some, unless there's no vocals going on, but whole notes while there's vocals happening. I mean, that texture, that's just going to be really hard to balance. I'd rather see, you know, put the horn hits in the holes where they're not singing, you know, and there are exceptions to that for sure, but just, you don't have to, and every horn doesn't have to play all the time. You know, particularly if there's a line that, you know, something that has to happen. But I think whole notes in the band parts, just they want it to sound nice and thick, but then all of a sudden now there's no room for, the vocals just aren't going to come through because they're just being covered up. Sorry, Brock, Go ahead.
I was just going to piggyback off Robert with more parts doesn't automatically equal better. You hear groups sing in 3 parts and it sounds perfectly balanced and just comes across in good ranges. It sounds amazing. And that to me is better than 6 parts and it's not as strong. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's places for those 6 parts. They exist, but make that
but if you're writing gospel music and you write it in 6 parts, that's wrong gospel. You know, that's leisure suit gospel. The gospel we're talking about are, you know, we're going to church and that 3-part ratcheted up. If you make that 6 parts, it ruins it. It sounds like a hymnal. That's going to just rock, isn't it? Just write it like voice it in the hymnal. That's just going to really rock. You know, it's just not, you know.
And then another mistake I see a lot of in newer arrangers is doubling what the choir's singing in the horns, which doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Exactly what Eric said is what I'm always telling my band kids is you're playing in the vocal hole. You can play there. Like there's times when they're not. I'm a bad arranger who does the whole notes every now and then, softly, like as we're building. So there's a difference between those spots. And here's two beats of vocal rest that you have a horn lick in, and that's your moment.
Yeah. So let's get deep and philosophical here for a second. How do you tell if what you've written is right for the kids? You know, because I've heard great groups just sing the crap out of a bad arrangement and it sounds amazing, and then I've heard kids that are out of they're in over their heads a little bit trying to sing something that's too hard for them and it doesn't work, you know, and it's not really the arrangement's fault, but I guess how do you find that balance?
Well, I'm not telling.
You know, go back to key one more time, and part of a lot of help that you can give your arranger on picking a key is, I mean, I've had people really lay it out. They're like, sopranos can go up to this note from this note to this range. Altos can go here, here, here. I got a tenor that can really do this, but the rest of the tenors need to be down here. I got bass that can do that, and so that'll help you out. You know, knowing and having it fit right for the people, but asking those couple of questions and then get the feedback. Or I was going to say this on the last one is listen to a lot. So it's like, how do you know what to do if you don't listen to a lot? I was one of those people in show choir that when I was in it, I would go listen to every single group of the day that I would see, or we would get videos back in the day before we had YouTube. You know, you would call the competition that happened last week and you'd call the videographer and you'd be like, yeah, send me a copy of every person that was there. And that would come in the mail. I can't tell you how much money we spent on that, but it was like game film. we wanted to see, and I wanted to see, I want to listen what everybody else has done. And so once you figure out what everybody else is doing, then you can figure out what you want to do. But until you learn what everybody else has done, then, so that'll help you. And then I like to talk to the director a lot. I say, look, after you read through that one time, then call me back. Or after you've read through it a couple times and they can get the notes in the room, call me back. If something's not working, let's fix it right now. And let's figure it out before it gets down the road. But sometimes I get those calls, and then you learn what it's like the repetition, the clients you work with on a regular basis, then you got them figured out. So, and you're not working with professionals, so that will change from year to year. So,
yeah, and piggybacking on that, I've spent an embarrassing number of hours watching videos of stuff I've arranged, because my job's not done when I send the music off. I want to hear that performance or see that performance and analyze what I could have done differently, what I did that worked really well, what I did that I never want to do again. I mean, it's important to me to to reflect on my own work, because that's how I keep getting better. And it's important to me to keep improving, to be the best arranger I can be. I need to be critical of my own work, and not only other people's work, seeing what other people do, but also taking a look at what I've done and what has worked and what hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I always assume I'm the worst. So
I love to see what other people, have done. I remember, you're sitting there, you're watching. I think it was Garrett. Garrett, did you do an arrangement of Rhythm of Life? Who performed that? Who would that have been?
That was Lawrence Central.
Okay, so Rhythm of Life. I don't particularly love that song. I don't really like, I love the show, but I don't really like that song in the show. And I've actually arranged it, and it was a lift. And if you're going to do Rhythm of Life, I thought I have a very solid arrangement of Rhythm of Life. But if anybody calls me to buy that, I'm just going to send them to Garrett, because when I heard his arrangement, I went, dang, he worked it up. He worked it up. I don't know what he did, or maybe the arrangement. I don't know, maybe it's just a regular arrangement, and those kids just killed it. But I don't think that, when you hear it and you go, he solved a problem I didn't know existed. And so I love to see when other people do that. That's why I like show choir camps in America, to go hang around people. They all get that one stupid little thing, and you're all, you can kind of just, or just hanging out with you guys now. If I see something, I'm not mad about it. I'm just going to take it. Use it. I'll try to disguise it a little bit, but I mean, seriously, and the other thing is, we all have songs that we've all arranged that have duplicated in our libraries, I suppose. But, if somebody calls me and they want an arrangement of something and somebody else did an arrangement I think would fulfill that, I'd rather not write that. I mean, unless it needs to be tailored to that group in some specific way. And often that's the case. But, I want to do something else. I want to go, and I will think about that. Here's how I know if I think an arrangement's good. When it's all said and done and it's ready and it's out the door, and I go back and I listen one more time and go, that didn't suck. Or this is great. You guys may not be old enough to do this yet. You put an arrangement away for 10 years and you listen to it again and you go, well, I'm so glad that didn't stink. That would have made me feel really bad about myself. That was pretty good, Now and then you'll go, what was that? But, it's nice to go back and hear something that you've done. And by the way, I don't think any of the people that are here get better, because you're not all doing this because, you're trying to, it's not the fastest way to make a buck, really, it's not. But you want to get better, and I don't want somebody to be able to do something I can't do. I would learn what to do, not just for the people that are sitting here too, but I mean, there's some other great arrangements. Jeff Bowen's done some really cool things. The stock guys, Mac Hoff does some really cool and clever, inventive things. And I don't want to say one, not say the others, but you know, that, I mean, there's just, I want to get better and I want to see what you're all doing. And, you know, if I see something that I think is just really cool, I'm just going to give credit to it. Send some people there. Do you guys ever, you could do that to me too. You could send those right back to me, those people.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna steal stuff. I mean, you know, if I heard somebody else doing it, I was like, I'll use that next time.
Yeah, I've been having some nights since I've, you know, you listen to Wabanzi and you listen to Wheaton Warrenville and all John Burley's stuff. And one time I knew if I think he's going to be judging somewhere, I'll just go ahead and put that added second in there just so he can, so just to rub his nose in a little bit.
Well, so much of arranging is problem solving though, right? I mean, just like you were saying earlier, I think sometimes I spend more time figuring out what key it should be in than I actually spend writing the song, you know? And
yeah.
When you go around and you listen to all these groups, you're adding things to your bag of tricks and you're waiting for the right moment to use it, you know? It may be stealing, but you're in a totally different show. It's in a totally different context, you know, and it's.
And what you were saying before about new arrangers, you don't have to put every trick in every arrangement. A song doesn't have to have a breakdown and a key change, you know, and a second dance break and then a costume check. Although that's a good recipe, I don't want to give it away. But no, I mean, you don't want to, you know, if you know, you've seen people do this. They do their second number and you go, there's no way, they've blown their show. There's no way they can top what they did in their second song. And that's, you do that a couple of times and you learn that lesson. I remember doing that. We did many, it's not a arrangement thing, but we did the Fog Waltz, like 1992. It was a year that happened in the last century. And we figured out how to do Scott Allersmeyer, not we, this guy named Scott Allersmeyer, figured out how to make this fog wall shoot up and last for 14.2 seconds on a good day if the tanks were heated. I shouldn't have added that part. That's a secret. Scratch that before you print it, Garrett. But you know, we did that at the end of our first number, threw up the fog, did a costume change, it came down. There's nothing we could have done after that to top that. My moment was like, whoa, but you know, so you have to learn, you know, same thing goes with arranging. You can't, you know, you have to save something and let it build. And sometimes just a nice, simple arrangement of something like Black Velvet. Linda McCachran did it for, was it Decatur maybe? Black Velvet. I don't know, look it up. It's a thing. It was arrangement and it was so simple. There was not one note or move choreographically that didn't need to be there. And it was awesome. And you remember those moments many years later, you know, so, you know, and that's what we're all trying to do, right? To try to make something memorable. And there you go. I diverged again for you there. Yeah.
Well, that's the hard part, isn't it? Right? Like making things memorable to judges that have been sitting and watching it for 22 hours already that day. I mean, keeping it simple is one thing, but how do you pick your moments? And how do you make them obvious that they're moments, you know? Because sometimes the performance doesn't necessarily land or something's a little off. I mean, is that just in the performers, or are there ways you can write it to make it really stick the landing?
You make it a moment by not making every second of the song a moment. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like you build to it, use them sparingly.
Yeah, every you know, it's a lot easier to craft that if you're doing a whole show, I feel like, rather than one number. But it's like a theme park, and every ride at the theme park is not the fastest roller coaster. There are some kiddie rides, and you know, there's something for everybody. And then within that roller coaster, you know, that might be an individual song. So within that roller coaster, there are, you know, ups and downs. I mean, you can't just be upside down the whole time. You know, that would be intense. But is it one of those roller coasters where they shoot you up and take you down and it's over in a minute? Or, I mean, that can be really, really valuable. And the whole less is more. So I mean, I have a rule that I never do a second verse, just because you already did it once. So if you can do it again, it needs to mean something. So keep that roller coaster in mind, and how you're going to build and how you're going to keep that attention. Because if you don't have a roller coaster, you're just a train. And nothing against trains, but they're not the most exciting thing. Generally, I don't know.
I think there's two different things. There's pacing within the song, and there's pacing within the show. For screenwriters, there's a guy named Blake Snyder that came up with this thing called a beat sheet, and it's by page 10 this should happen, and by on a 110-page script, and by this page this is the point. In so many movies, after I read about this, I write with that place where it's like, all hope is lost. You stop and look, and it's always at the same place. And it's a formula. Not every film does that, but a surprising number of films follow this beat sheet. So where does this happen? And so I used to take Disney shows that I liked, and I would record them and I would pace them. Where are the break points? Where does the song change? What's the tempo do? And so you can watch that. If you watch some shows you really like and then map it like that, you'll see what you like. So you're not just going, oh, well, I like this song. This is not about the song as much as how the song works. Does the song work into whatever it is you're trying to do? Mm-hmm. So should you start a show choir show with a slow song? No, unless it's really good, and then you should. If it works in your whole show, then it's like there's no better way to do it. So you have to map. I do that. I map out different shows. If I think, I remember when I was competing, I would look at other groups and map their show and go, why are they getting how's that happening? I would map it out, and sometimes you find they were probably doing a happenstance, and then you find other people, arrangers, directors, that they're doing something, and then you hit their formula and you go, that's cool. And now I see that, and not that you're going to do that, but there's a lot of nuance with how that all happens, and a group's ability to do that, and then so you can write those nuances by accident.
Yeah, and if it is one of those clients that you're just writing a song or two for their show, and they're getting the other numbers from somebody else or previously arranged out of a catalog or something, it's important to know how the songs that you are writing fit into the show as a whole. Like, not only do you need to know like what position they're going in, but it helps to know like the style, the tempo, everything of what's going to come before it, what's going to come after it. And some people, and I feel like most of the people that I work with are really good about giving me an outline of the whole show, even if I'm only doing a couple of the songs. But if they don't, ask, because that's important. You're going to write a better arrangement for them if you know what they're looking to get out of the number, rather than, I just want this Bruno Mars song.
Yeah. That's really interesting too, because you said that's kind of an offshoot of that. We all, I'm guessing, have catalogs, and we sometimes resell material or put it in a different way or redo that, whatever. If you're a choral director and you don't have a great budget and you want some really cool arrangements, you can go look at their catalog, by the way, ericvancleave.com. It'll be up probably within a week or 10 days. So it's going to be so cool. It's groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking, but it works really well. Call the arranger and go, I want 5 cool arrangements that other people don't know you have that are cool. That's that you can go looking through somebody's catalog all day long, which is great. But I think, I don't want, just because it's a used arrangement, for it to not work for them. If somebody says, I want to do that song, that's great, but what about this? It's going to go there, or do this, but only do part of that, or whatever. But the arrangers have cool things tucked back that nobody, or maybe it's obscure or something that you may not know, but it works really well for show choir. It just hits it. It sings well. That's gold. Because there's only so many new songs they write every week, and there are a lot of them you aren't show choir fun, you know. So you know, there's some cool things hidden from recent and you know in the back part of people's catalogs too. So you know, call people and ask them the cool what do you have that nobody's doing that you know people would think about them.
Yeah, and don't just shop by song title.
Yes.
Like this Bruno Mars song arranged as a second number is going to be different than the same Bruno Mars song arranged as a closer. So make sure that what you're getting is the right arrangement of that song.
Yes.
Good call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the show band side of things. All of you have extensive experience working with bands, not just writing for them, but actually, you know, being in the pit and rehearsing and performing. I think we can all agree the biggest challenge for people is balance and dynamics, right? So why don't we just start there? I first want to ask, like, do you write the dynamics in your music, or do you write them in a certain way that you found has been successful in getting that to happen? Or is it just something you got to do in rehearsal? You got to figure out, you got to set the levels. I mean, is there a trick to it?
I'll take this one first. So as somebody who's been fortunate to look at a lot of different arrangers things, I don't write dynamics in. And I don't do this for my own group, which is kind of weird. Well, the reason why I don't do it for my own group is because I teach them and I tell them what dynamics I want. And so there's a couple different reasons. First of all, I tend to change my mind a lot. And so if it's written in pencil, we just erase it, you know, change it. If it's printed in ink on the paper, then they got to scratch that out and do something different. It just makes for ugly looking music. And that's another pet peeve of mine. So I want the music to look nice and neat. But I do it for that reason. And also I find that if the student wrote it in themselves, then they tend to remember it more often. Now, if I'm writing it for a professional group and, you know, like some of the stuff that Eric has done, and you're not going to be the person working with them and it's professionals, then yeah, you got to put that stuff in there because that, you know, you're wasting people's time. The things that I've done for movies, I mean, you have to be extremely, I mean, not overly detailed, but you want to put your intent in there so that everybody knows what you meant. So I do think that dynamics are probably a big one. That's I don't know. That's probably probably the biggest one that you get a lot of comments on when you're judging. But that one, and then it's going to be, you know, your intonation things and stuff like that. So I'll stop before I get off topic.
I'm about 50-50 with writing in dynamics. I don't write them all in, but if I'm writing some sort of a moment, like if I'm a suddenly soft moment or something, or a 8 bars that start soft and builds into something, then sometimes I'll put those things in, but I don't necessarily dictate the dynamics the entire time, because I feel like sometimes that happens naturally in rehearsal, or a certain dynamics will go better with what they're doing physically, and it all needs to be cohesive. So if I'm trying to create a moment, then I'll put the dynamics in, but they're not in there for the whole thing.
What he said.
Yeah, it depends on what it is, you know. But one of my pet peeves is banshee dynamics. Like you're singing along in this, and then it's very, very loud. Look, if I will just say this, if you are within 60 seconds from the end of your show and you hit a pianissimo, you've pianissimoed me off. Don't jerk me around. Don't jerk me around. Punch me in the face. Let's punch. Oh, that's like, oh, do you want a bite? No, you don't get a bite. You can do that, but if you're in the last 60 seconds of your show and you do that, I don't like you as much as I did before you did that. It's like, how many dynamics can we do? I hate that. Did you do enough dynamics? You know, it's like, oh my God, you know, if something will only work at a certain dynamic range, like it gets open or, you know, whatever, then I'll put the obvious ones in there. I will put them in if it makes if that's the only way that makes that work. But you're good, they're good. You know, you sort of, you have to know, you don't want to write things that have to be soft at that point. If they're playing along and it is soft, that's great, or you can do that. But now you're choreographing the song, and you know, and again, that goes better if I know the choreographer. I can know sort of their temperaments and you know and where that goes. But again, don't do it if you're within 60 seconds to your bow, or then you're don't just don't. Or you know, those Banshee dynamics. Oh my God, the dynamics those were so impressive. Those dynamics that you never hear in nature, anywhere in nature, ever. You know. Anyway, yeah. I ranted. There you go. You got me worked up.
I feel like I break that rule every year, and Eric always calls me on it. But I lost what I was going to say. There needs to be a purpose for the dynamics. Like dynamics for dynamics' sake, or just dynamics for dynamics' sake. Like there needs to be a musical purpose. Why are you doing this? Are you building towards something?
Yeah.
Yep. What he said.
So what would you guys say is the best way when you're putting things together with your choir? What's the best way to just set levels and figure out kind of the defaults and how loud everyone should be playing? Because I feel like whenever I'm judging, if it's the first week of the season, I feel like I could just write band's too loud on every paper and go home, you know, because they haven't really figured it out yet. And then the second week, it's always going to be now the band's too quiet, you know, because they've overcompensated. So how do you set those levels?
Let me tell you something. In fact, I've with the launch of my website, did I mention that? It's going to be ericvancleave.com. It's not launched yet. Well, you'll get a busy signal right now, but probably within 4, 5, 6, 9 days or 2 months. I don't know. I've done some little videos of going in there, and I'll tell you my favorite one is this. If the first thing you say to your band is play softer, you've lost them. So I love this. This is a trick. This is a pro tip. There you go. Get every band member a green highlighter and go up to them before you start rehearsal and say, take this green highlighter. I need you to mark the following things in green. And you tell them the dance breaks and the intros, okay? And then you do it and you say, remember, where you see green, play loud. And you stop and go, no, I said louder. Okay, it gets gross, but there you go. Then the next rehearsal, you remind them, whenever you see green, you play loud. And then you work the show, and then they play too loud and go, wait. You go back and give them all pink marker and go, mark these things. Mark these, and when you see this color, play less. I need much less there. But on the green ones, I need you to play louder. If all you ever do is tell them to play softer, or you know, play that snare play the snare drum with lots of intensity, but not so much volume. It's like, that's hard to do. That's, you know, sometimes, you know, you gotta. You know, the other thing is, you know, you can aim those horns sideways. That's a great thing. Here's another trick, and I hope I'm not giving this away. If most contests you go to, they've got too many mics, often too many mics with a lot of coverage. You put them all up, you're going to get feedback, so they have to pull them all back. So on your dance breaks, make friends with the sound person. Find the overhead mic closest to the horns. When you go in, identify which mic it is, whoever's at the soundboard on the dance breaks, going to turn down the front row of mics and shove that horn mic, you know, to whatever it'll take. And then the horns have to, by the way, I waste a lot of time telling bands, if you want to be heard, aim your horn bells up. Aim the bells of your horns up. Aim the bells of your, and that, you know. I finally, last year, I had a picture of Brock's band, and those horn players went boom, like that. I went, well, here's who's going to beat you. So you look at that and see what that looks. And it's often the professionals. They've hired a band, and well, they play their third trumpet with the blank. It's like, okay, but what I'm going to need you to do, blank, is to put that horn up into that microphone. And if you do that, that alone will fix, you know, that fixes the loud part and the soft parts. Remove the whole notes, keep it down. You know, if you have to, the drummer, I think, is always a thing. You have to play with intensity, but, you know, be careful. You know, if you're not a band director and you can't figure out why the drums are covering so much, if they're playing the ride cymbal while they're singing, have them move to a hi-hat. The hi-hat's much more contained. The ride cymbal just kind of rings over and is picked up by the mics, you know. So there's some basic tricks that'll pull that back. With amped instruments, make sure the player is always standing in front of the amp, because if they're standing behind it, they don't know what's going on it. The other thing is bass waves converge at 8 and 16 feet. If your if your bass player is 4 feet away, it's not loud at all, but you step 4 more feet forward and you can't hear anything else. And so, you know, that fixes bass. Guitar, you know, can't be, the tweeter can't be pointed right at a microphone, you know, unless you're running, the trumpets aim sideways. So I think it's a combination of massaging all those things out, but the players have to be with you. And, you know, because, you know, it's hard to be great without that band, and to get them on your side, I think is part of the trick. And there's some people, you know, Big Cheeks in Virginia, they get that down there, and Brock's group gets that. All the great groups, the bands there's buy-in, you know, and I think that's how you get them to play softer. You get them to have buy-ins, so they care about the whole project, not just they're there because a friend of theirs is there.
Yeah, I like a lot of that. There's some things that I do very differently. And that's the awesome thing about show choirs, that you hear a lot of different things. And I never want my band to point in a microphone. So that's a difference between Eric and I, but I do work the dynamics. And one of my biggest things is that, and I've been fortunate to be around the activity for a really long time, where you see things change. When I first started it, you either had like a jazz band, you know, like a 4, 4, and 5 or whatever. You would either have like that jazz band approach, or you would have like, you know, kind of your, what I call the earth, wind, and fire. It's like 3 trumpets and then a rhythm section and maybe like a guitar or whatever. So you had that, and now you kind of grow into situations where there's a huge gamut of personnel in a band. And so my goal has always been to never hear, I don't want to know where the trumpets end and the strings and the guitar begin. Like, I don't want that to be a clear line. I want it to be very homogenized. I want it to be very balanced, partly because I've never had a whole lot of horns, so I would compensate with synthesizers and things. And so I didn't want it to be obvious that it was a synthesizer. I wanted it to sound real. And so I didn't want it to be, so balance was a really, really, really big thing for me. And I never want the horns in the microphones. And part of the reason for that is because I want to try to reserve the microphones for the singers. And then a lot of places that you go would be hit or miss. So sometimes the microphones are really great, and sometimes they're terrible. And so you have to try to navigate that world to try to figure out what the band's going to do and where everything's going to be. And that's kind of why I migrated to more of a PA setup rather than individual amps. I mean, I started in that world. We would have a bass amp, a keyboard amp, a guitar amp, or whatever, and then sort of now I'm homogenized into a PA where everything is, there's only 2 speakers and there's 1 on each side. And so that's just
do they have
different challenges.
Do the players can they hear themselves? I mean, the guitar players can.
Yeah, they can hear themselves.
Monitor?
They can hear themselves. And so, like I said, I've done this for many years, and I probably haven't done it the same way twice, because I've tried to get better and better and better. And I try to reduce the amount of stage noise. But I also, so when you take away the fact that there's a, you know, bass speaker next to them, then you just present another set of challenges. And so it's what works for best for every person that you have. And so I try not to, you know, if it's a directional facing thing, you know where that's going to go. And I've seen some people that run off of the amp situation and they do it great. I mean, if you have drums and you have a backdrop that's in front of the drums, then that's even better. But when you take that backdrop away, then you're gonna, you know, you gotta account for that. So there's some tricks and there's some things that you can do like that. But you know, that's kind of my approach.
Anything you want to add, Brock?
I mean, we still just use amps, and I mean, I've heard tons of groups and tons of bands out there that use a PA system and they sound fantastic. I just don't trust myself with that. I'm old school. Yeah, I mean, we still don't even, we're probably one of the only groups in the country that doesn't use a number line. The kids space themselves on riser cracks and middles and microphones, just like we did when we were in high school. So with the band, we're still using amps for everything. And for me, it's just getting the kids to listen. Getting the kids to listen to each other, to learn how to learn what they're listening for, to learn how to blend and balance with each other live, and it's tricky.
Mhm.
But I'm more comfortable with that personally, and I'm like Robert, and I think maybe we talked about this before this actually started, but I'm at the soundboard so that I can hear how everything sounds out there, and I can get word back like, this is too loud, this needs to come down, this needs to come up, that kind of stuff, and that just works for us.
Awesome, guys. Why don't we open it up for a few minutes for any questions? No one's put anything in the chat yet, but I'm sure there's probably a few out there. Anybody want to jump in with something?
Please ask a question.
I have a question.
Go, Leah.
What would you? I'll help everybody. I have a question. So, what would you say is the ideal hierarchy? Is the ideal like instrumentation? If you just had your perfect world as far as a judge or as a more, yeah.
I think that the one thing that kind of the stepping off point is a lot of the show packs or instrumental packs you get from stock publishers, they often have 2 trumpets, a sax, and a trombone. But a sax, and they'll play the sax does not carry the same way a trumpet or trombone does.
Right.
So I think that if they're mic'd, that's great, but that's often not going to be the case, which is why I prefer 3 trumpets, 3 trumpet parts. If you have to have 4 trumpets to get 3 trumpet sound, whatever, but you have to also know that that's 3, but whatever they play is going to project, presuming they're aiming in the same direction. You have a chance of that blending once it gets out there. If you got 2 trumpets, tenor sax, the tenor sax loses every time, So I think having that balance, or else 2 trumpets and a high trombone player, you can really ring those 3-part chords when you need them to. Otherwise, you have to be a little more careful with how you're writing those horn parts, and it depends on if this person, now all of a sudden each part matters, or it starts having these open fifths and stuff. But I prefer 3 trumpets. I don't really like 8 trumpets. That's just a lot. 1 or 2 trombones, and and I'm a saxophone player. I love saxophone player, but saxophones often have intonation problems. The joke is, how do you get 2 alto sax players to play in tune with each other? And the answer is, shoot one. There we go. So sorry, it's bad. What's the difference between a saxophone and a lawnmower? The grip. Okay, I can say that I was a saxophone player. But if you have saxophone players, they all need to be good. But the saxophone players, I mean, and it's written right in the vocal range too. So be careful with. But I generally write for 3 trumpets, alto, tenor, bari sax, and a couple of trombones, and whatever synthesis and rhythm section.
So alto, tenor, and bari.
I write that only because people generally have that, And if I know somebody's band isn't going to do that, and it's it's a swing chart or something that really depends on that, that's a discussion you want to have as you either select material or you're talking to the arranger. And sometimes, depending on what it is, sometimes the horn parts just need to be rescored a little bit. Sometimes people go, I don't know what I'm going to have, just write something. And when they call later and go, well, I got a tuba, and I have 3 French horns and a somebody asked me if I could write a clarinet part for Tower of Power. I said, no. They said, you don't have time? I went, no, I have time.
Just nobody's going to hear.
It's the superintendent's daughter, I said. Hand her a shaker.
It's the superintendent.
Give her a trumpet part. Tell her to go at it.
So how much do you guys supplement with keyboards with instrumentation either you don't have, or to reinforce for volume purposes? Do you guys or just normally write synth pad, one person, strings, or?
Maybe I should take this one. I think I'm the king of the synthesizers. So my ideal instrumentation, I kind of gravitate towards the Tower of Power method. I go with 2 trumpets. I don't really like altos because they tend to play out of tune a lot. So tenor and bari are my favorite saxophones, but I also like a trombone. I don't generally, I mean, you could, I guess if I had 2 trumpets, a tenor and a bari, and 1 good trombone, then I'd be happy. If I had 3 people and they were really good, I'd go with the Chicago approach, but I haven't been that lucky. So I generally need, a trumpet player needs a backup guy, or gal. And so I am the king of synthesizers. I've gone from when I first started performing in show choir, we had 2. Our director played, David Fair always plays the piano, so he would be our piano player, accompanist, and then we had 2 synthesizers, but for the past 20 or so years, I've had 5. And so
what do
people
you
are
use
going
for brass? What synthesizer and patch do you use to double back to cover brass?
I'll give you my Venmo username, and then I'll tell you. I'm kidding.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
Myself on mute.
So yeah, that was my one. No, I use a lot of different ones, to be honest.
That's different than OnlyFans, isn't it? Is that different than OnlyFans?
Yeah, I don't have that. Sorry. I don't have that. So I use a lot of different ones, and I'll tell you the reason why I have 5 synths is because, yes, they are covering that gamut, and then it takes the responsibility down on any one player. So, I mean, I'll be honest, my synth players, the amount of times in the show that they're playing both hands is probably pretty rare. Maybe introductions, maybe dance breaks, and definitely the end of the show and the closer, but it would be strategically placed. And so most of the time they got one hand on the volume and the other hand's playing. And so I've done other things like that, like use volume foot pedals and things, but I will change the patches all the time. I will change the patches mid-song. I will change, it just depends. And so I have one company that I really use all of their different gear. And so I've been very fortunate, and we just sort of collected it over the years. I mean, if you went out and bought it all at one time, it would set you back up a little bit, but you can get it done now like that. And I have used virtual instruments in there, like software synths that you can purchase and use with a computer. So there are economical ways that you can do it. I mean, you can pay $30 and get Apple's main stage and have access to a lot of synths that are great. Some of them don't sound great on their own, but if you put them with other things, then you can blend them. And so I don't know if I'm the synthesizer king, but a lot of people, when they see the 5 on a cart rolling by, they're like, So
he didn't disclose that patch he's using, did he?
No, he didn't tell me, but maybe he'll tell me.
I'll definitely tell you the brands of the keyboards. I mean,
okay, tell us the brands. Spill the beans.
I'm a Korg guy, so I have 2 Korg. Let's see, what's the newest one called? Kronos. Had 2 Korg Kronos. Over the years, I've had Tritons, and there's one called the M3. I've had the Korg Triton Extreme, the Korg Karma, and I definitely have a Kurzweil. Those, if you go to any Broadway orchestra or any Broadway show, you're going to see a Kurzweil 2600 down there, or 2500. You're gonna see one of their keyboards, because the orchestral patches are insane. So if it's an orchestral song, a couple years ago we did "If I Can't Love Her" for the second time, and in a show from Beauty and the Beast, and there's a lot of patches in there that are like flute, clarinet, oboe, and things like that. The Kurzweil, man, you can't tell the difference. You really can't. And so the horn patches are the most difficult, like Eric was asking. So you really have to be good about that and make sure it's not barky or like cheesy, or unless you're playing Toto's Africa and then you just really want some brass. But the Kronos is a really good place to start.
Kronos. Okay, there you have it. You got it from him, right from the horse's mouth. Which patch number?
There's a bunch of them. Actually, the Kronos is most user-friendly, and if you're occasionally,
I don't have Kronos. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing out.
Yeah, I use different. They're now called attaché brass. Sorry, I don't know what they were at the beginning.
Okay.
A special blend of herbs and spices.
You know, you can fix some of that with your song choices, though. I mean, if you know you're not gonna have brass players and you're gonna use a lot of synths, like you can pick, you know, music where that synth brass sound is going to fit the style, and then then you don't have to pretend to be something you're not. You know,
Right. So if you're doing a big band show and you're
Absolutely.
gonna have horn, you know.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll agree on that. So I mean, I don't use the same one for every song. So it just, I mean, you know, Toto brass is going to sound much different than, you know, September brass or whatever.
Love Toto.
Yeah, one of our alumni is on tour with him, by the way.
Really?
And that's
Yeah.
Cool.
That was not a shameless plug for myself. I was plugging somebody else. Yeah. Drumming away for Toto. So.
Other questions?
Yes, it does, Anita.
Hi.
Hi.
As a student, as someone who's not a professional in the industry yet, hello, Eric.
What's up, man?
I just had this question. What are your strategies for going about getting your name out there? Like meeting people?
What's your name?
My name is Michael. Let me do an Eric. Hi, I'm Michael.
What's your
Sinatra.
last
You can look
name?
me up on Facebook. Please reach out.
Say your name slowly again and let people know how they can get in touch with you. That's how you get your name out there.
That's the fantastic strategy, I suppose. Yeah, I'm young in this industry and I really want to be a part of it, and I am Michael. Please,
you know, just get. Here's the deal. Just get good. And you know this, and I've seen some of his work. He does some good writing. I think it's just, you know, keep doing what you do and keep getting better, and then look at, you know, get Brock's arrangement of this, or get, you know, one of the, you know, if you are going to be using synthesizers, you know, somebody else to go look, you know, so find whoever, you know, is kind of doing what you think, but, you know, don't kind of just stop there to all the people that are, you know, so just get good at what you're doing. And, you know, it's never been easier because you can play it back and you can, by and large, hear what it sounds like, you know, by playing it back in your computer. By the way, I hate when you play back on Sibelius or whatever, and they assign those sounds for the voices. I usually make those into pianos because otherwise it just ruins the whole sound of the sound. I don't know why I mentioned that, but a lot of people play me new arrangements and they've always got that. And it's like, that sounds, but you know, change it to something else so that we can hear it, and maybe a different patch than your piano. But just keep getting good, and you know, don't worry about making money, because that'll happen as soon as you have utility. There's somebody that wants and needs that. There are things that I don't want to write. You know, if it's something that I don't necessarily want to do a record rip of something, unless for some reason it's a client, I do their whole show or whatever. So, you know, people will go, you know, they'll try you on something. Just be consistent, and you know, find a couple of groups to write for, and you'll just. And the good thing about that is, for anyone that's doing it, if you write for a band or a choir, and then you go and you can hear it tonight, and then you come back tomorrow and go, wait a minute, I need to change that. So that process, I don't know, I'd be anxious to hear, is that how you guys did the other three of you smart guys, you know, how did you get good?
I was looking for the smart guys, because there's
for me, I lucked into a gig down in Springfield. I think I was like 22 years old. It's the guy who's the choral director at Naperville North now, so we've been working together this long. But he was looking for an arranger and somebody to direct his band, and I mean, they were a terrible group. but we took them to contest, and I would get instantaneous feedback by hearing it played live. So we rehearsed on the weekend because we both traveled to Springfield from where we were living. And I would go home, change the things that didn't work, go back the next week, immediately get to hear it. Okay, this works, or no, this still isn't quite right. And I mean, that 2 years that I did that was just invaluable experience. Just find something like that where you can just get in there. Find a group with a young director who's up and coming to just, it may not be all about the money in the beginning, but it's about the experience, and that's going to be more valuable to you than, you know, anything.
Yeah, don't worry so much about the money. I mean, I know it seems so tempting, but you know, just get good. Just get good, and the money, you know, the money will follow, or well, I don't know, maybe, you know, but you know, just get good.
I'm majoring in music education in the state of Illinois. It's never been about the money.
I pay more than Mississippi. Yeah. So obviously, because you're going through school now, then score study is a thing, and so I went and like, if you want a tower of power chart, I literally have every single one charted out just like they play it. You know, and I had to do that to figure out how they voice things. Same with Chicago. There are resources out there you can purchase. You can see how do they get that sound, to know what that, you know, I'm going to talk about horns, but that's a good one. And then, like Brock said, it's great if you can find and attach yourself to a group, and say, hey, I'd really like to help you. I'd really like to do this. I was very fortunate to be able to teach my group that I was a part of, and I knew nothing. And so if it wasn't for that experience, if it wasn't for David and Mary Fair and being around that every day, and then taking me to contests where I saw, you know, Eric's groups, I was a child of the late 90s. And so if I hadn't done that and been exposed to musicals and things like that, then I probably wouldn't have, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. So it is definitely that opportunity, but try to find a group to attach yourself to. And then when you write something, then you can go, hey, let's play this, you know, even if it's just like a band feature. We always have like band features in our show at the end of the year, like we do for our parents. It's a big thing when there's a band feature, and I'd write it and we'd start learning. And I was like, well, that's terrible. Let me fix that. Let me change that. And then you just kind of note to self, this is what you do. And I've been fortunate to see a lot of score study. And so if you're looking for a score, or if you're looking for something, you know, some for educational purposes, then, you know, I'll be glad to help somebody out.
Yeah.
Same.
I think it's cool to do with, I mean, I do that with, I've done it lately, but with like Beethoven scores, or I bought John Williams scores and followed it along. I listened like maniacally. I'd follow and watch each line as I listened to the whole Star Wars suite or whatever, you know, and you know, it was like, oh my gosh, that's how they did that, you know, oh, the clarinet and the flute together, you know, or that's why that sounds so good doing that. So I think that's a great, and what you're saying, that's a great, people should take them up on that, because that's, particularly if you're not a band person. I mean, how are you going to learn how to write in short order? How are you going to learn how to write band parts unless you kind of go look at what other people are doing and how they're getting it done? By the way, the other thing is, if you're starting out and you're going to work with that band that's not very good, don't write something hard. They need to get at it. You need to put it in a good key for them, you know. Don't put anybody in, you know, 5 flats and want them to play it and really get into it. They're not going to, you know. So give them something that can be impactful, repetitive hits or something, things that sound cool, song maybe they know, or something like that. But, you know, make it accessible for the people you're writing for. Ultimately, if the band likes your parts, you know, they'll say so, you know. They'll, you know, and then that's good. Then if the choir director says, hey, the band loves playing those charts, it's like, when are they going to hear that? So, you know, put some love into that, and you know, it's not just the necessarily evil, especially in show choir, because what the bands are, it's hard to be killer. It's hard to do Smash Mouth show choir with a bad band, you know. So There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's like what Eric was saying. You want to be an arranger, not a show choir arranger. But if you're serious about being a part of the business of show choir and being, an arranger for the show choir community, then you want to be writing as much as you can, because it's gonna help you learn. But here's the thing, like, even though your initial arrangements might be for, somebody's prep group and no one's going to hear them, that's charts that you can add to your catalog and you can sell for the rest of your life. And here's the thing, even if they're bad, you can change them later before you send it out again. I have people order charts from 10 years ago and it's like, I need to work on this before.
I know. You spend more time going, oh, I can't let that out.
All the time.
Yeah.
But but like that's probably the quickest way for people to take you seriously. If you go to SCA or you post on some of those Facebook groups and you say, I have 100 arrangements, a lot of people are going to look at that. And I think eventually you'll find your people. You'll find your directors, you'll find your choreographers that you work with.
But I think what Brock said is good. If you would kind of attach yourself, choral directors don't need arrangers. Choral directors need band directors. I mean, you can buy an arrangement anywhere, but who's going to rehearse it? So that's a good skill to have.
And find an arranger. I've done this for several people. Send them a chart for feedback. I'm happy to do it anytime. I mean, that's how any of us get better, is through feedback. I mean, we were all there. I bugged Eric. I talked him into sending me a chart or two back in the day. I mean, you can still do that. And I'm happy to do that anytime. I
mean, there's not that many people that want to be show choir arrangers or arrangers, So it's not like people are calling daily. 30 calls of people that want. That's not, when you call somebody, they're probably going to answer. And that goes for, I'm not speaking for them, but, stock arrangers, go find them, they'll talk to you. They'd love to talk to you and ask them how they got what they're doing. Why'd you do that? Know their work. Find one of their arrangements, look at it, tear it apart, ask them, why'd you do that? They'll go, oh, that's kind of cool. Don't just call for no, hey, what can you tell me? And know something, know where you have a problem to solve, or go to somebody that does something, specifically well.
Well, there's plenty of work. I mean, there's tons and tons of arranging going on out there. I mean, more than the four of us could ever handle. So there's always going to be opportunities somewhere.
Yeah, I think if you can find one or two groups and work with them. I mean, I've had years where I did a lot of them, a lot of charts, but I prefer to do less, because then you spend more time on it, and you spend, especially if you're like, I had a full-time teaching job, and so you're working all day and you're doing show choir rehearsal at night and you're writing charts, and so that can be really, really grating. And so you're in school right now, so it's the time to sort of practice and cut your teeth on it, and then you kind of go from there. But less is more. Somebody raised their hand. That was cool. So
I didn't.
Hi. Hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thanks again for this opportunity. My name is David Groth, and I teach in Omaha, Nebraska. And my question was, and we touched on this earlier, I started using, PA system as well, in just like Robert did. And I found that unless I had, first of all, my guitar player insisted that he had an amp because he couldn't hear anything otherwise. And so I'm wondering how we solved that issue, because that was a problem. And so I ended up just disconnecting the PA system that I spent money on and going back to amps, because my accompanists and guitarists said they could not hear what they were playing, and therefore could not, figure out how they're, what they were going to do to be part of the ensemble. So that, I don't know how you fix those issues, or if you have any suggestions for that.
Okay, so I always carry, well, now at this point, because it's a school, I got one person who's killing it and the next person I'm training them, right? So I'll end up with two guitar players. And so the problem with the guitars was they would always, and Brock and Eric, you could probably attest to this well, is they got that amp and it's on stage and inevitably it would be too loud. And so I hated going back there and turning the amp down because guitar amps work on like a threshold. I mean, if you don't turn it up a certain amount, then why do you even have it? So they would be like, I would go back there and it was such a defeatist thing. I'd be like, I need you to turn down again. And they would be like, making that face. And then they would turn down and they'd be like, well, I can't hear my amp. Okay. So we would play around with directions. We'd play around with like turning the amp around to where it faced them. And then depending on the type of amp, then you would get sound coming out the back of it. And then we put like a board behind it with like some foam. We did all that kind of stuff to try to do it. And I mean, keep in mind, these are students. So if you had a professional, they would probably, be a little, they would know the value of it. They probably carry a smaller amp. They probably whatever, but these kids, sometimes they have really big amps. So, okay. So, and I got tired of lugging that stuff everywhere. So to be honest, I got rid of the amps. And there's some things that you can get now that I guess if there's any guitar purist in this group, then you probably would get mad at me. But there are some amp simulators, and I can give you the different ones we use. But I have one that's called the 11 rack, and it is basically a piece of rack gear, and it will emulate any amp, any pedal, any whatever. And so a couple years ago, Clinton, we did a Beatles show, and I pulled that whole thing off, and there were basically 21 Beatles songs in 17 minutes. And there's no way I could have gotten all those amps and guitars done without that. So they go through that, which then goes through the PA. And so I had a little speaker set up in front of them that was like their monitor. So that's kind of how I did it. Again, you have to do with what you have and what works best for you. So that was my model for fixing that. I have worked with clients that use different brands of amp simulators, like Line 6 makes one with the volume pedal built in. It's great. It just depends on how much control you want to have and how much control you want to give the students. I have found that if you give the students more control, then you get more responsibility with blend and things like that. And a lot of times you end up with a better product. But if you give yourself control, then you're the one that's doing a lot of stuff. So it just depends on your situation. But I'm happy to, if you want to call at a different time and like discuss for a long time. I love talking about gear.
The good thing about that is you can actually mix from the audience. I mean, you can mix from an iPad or something. Keep this in mind. They have to be able to hear themselves, which was so there has to be some sort of monitor. So either they're hearing their amp, or they can hear the main, or you could get a separate headphone amp and they could wear a headphone, make sure they keep one ear off so they can still hear what's going on there. So if they can't hear themselves, you have to solve that. Little hotspot monitors, it's another piece of equipment, but a hotspot, they're aimed, so they're not, going to do that. They're going to go, they have to be right next to you. So there are a lot of solutions. Make sure you set your monitor levels first, and then add whatever main you're not getting. In other words, if your guitar player's on stage still playing an amp, but it's much softer, hear that before you pull your mains up. Only add what you can't hear. It's like you may not need to put a mic on, I don't know, the snare drum, maybe. I don't know. Depends on where you are, what you're doing, but if you don't need to monitor that, you don't need to, because the drum is right there. So, but other people, and they also want to be able to hear each other. But you can also get equipment out where it's just so, and then now one piece of equipment goes out and you're, whatever. So, I mean, I guess the long answer to that is there's no simple, easy way to do it. Everyone's fighting that same fight. Everyone's fighting. It does make life easier if your singers can sing out and project. That makes the band problem much easier.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Last call.
Anybody? Anybody? No, we've bored people to death. They're all asleep now. They're watching MacGyver on TV right now. Everyone's gone to watch MacGyver.
That show's still on.
Well, thanks to the three of you. This was really awesome. It was really fun getting to pick your brains on all this stuff. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Before we go, I wanted to give each of you kind of a chance for, you know, a last word, you know, parting words of wisdom, shameless plugs of self-promotion, whatever you guys want to do. Rock, why don't you go first?
We should just go ahead and agree to shamelessly plug ourselves, and that way one person will not be left out.
Oh, I hear shame. There's a shame coming his direction. We hear that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this was really fun. I am up to talk about this nerdy stuff anytime. So send me a message or whatever. I mean, really, this is great for me. So whether it's arranging or show band stuff, either one. I'm not the best person to talk to about gear because I've just looked into having like nerdy, geeky guitar players who are all about that kind of stuff who've just kind of been good. And I've never really had to worry about it. So that's one area where I don't think I'm the best to talk to. So call Robert for that one. But arranging or any basic show band stuff, I'll plug my catalog, bmkmusic.com. I have way too many arrangements there, and you can listen to a lot of them, or you can listen to all of them, but yeah, that's all. Not too shameful.
There you go.
Yeah. I guess I'll go next because in the order on my screen it's going here, so I'm in the middle. Yeah, I was very honored to be a part of this group. Like I said, I'm very, very fortunate to have been around this activity and had people who really helped me out and showed me the way and just allowed me to learn along the way. And then I've just been sort of a student of the activity and really learned. And while I did go to school for music education, that was in the band world. And so I feel like a lot of that has transferred. I mean, I feel like my biggest strong suits are the electronics. And if you're interested in electronic programming and things like that, there are a lot of tricks you can use. So I do have fun arranging, and but most of mine is just learning from that. I do have a big library of charts. If you're interested in looking at that, I can sort of give you a link to go look at those things. I don't just put them out on the website, obviously for copyright reasons, but I'm happy to talk with you about them and things like that, and maybe send a perusal copy. I do have a big project that I'm really working on. I know that everybody right now has the show choir licensing, music licensing procedures are very confusing and tedious, and not really one of the most fun things that you want to deal with at this point. And I'm working on something that's going to make that more painless, easily, and really actually enjoyable. So some of you could chuckle because licensing and enjoyable don't come in the same sentence right now. So the things that I can say about that project, this is my shameless plug, 3 former show choir members, myself and some other people, they started a company in Nashville called Sorted Noise. And you can look up their website, sorted, like you sort through things, Sorted Noise. And they make custom licensed music for TVs, movies, and advertisements. And they've been doing it for the past 10 years. So their music has been featured on Grey's Anatomy, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, This Is Us, things like that. And so they have a large catalog of original songs that they have written that will be perfect for show choir. And if you think about it, if a song really works for TV or a movie, then chances are it might work for show choir. So I have partnered up with them to create what we think is a pretty cool offering. We're going to make those songs in the catalog that we control available for show choir licensing, and they're going to come with some freebies like sync licenses and things like that. And it's sort of like a one-stop shop. So we have this big catalog of things that we're going to license to people. The other part that I'm really most excited about in this is the fact that we're able to create custom songs. This is something that is kind of new in our industry. And so these songwriters, the guys at Sort of Noise, are going to use their large community of songwriters and artists and musicians that have been on these television shows to craft songs for show choir. And so we're gonna go through there. And if you think about it, the knowledge of what the show choir community has, and be able to connect that with professional songwriters who are writing things every day, and for you to have input on that is going to be really big. And so if you're interested in knowing more about that, I can tell you that our rates will be competitive with what you may currently spend, but our experience will be a lot higher, and you will definitely receive more value for what you're getting. So if that's something you really want to know more about, then don't hesitate to give me a call or a message. But that's sort of, I'm very excited about that. So basically you have some boutique licensing places that are going to offer their stuff, you know, because they own it. So, but I do have a website, rallenmusic.com. And so you can check that out, or you can just message me. And again, I've been honored to be a part of this. So.
Is it my turn?
Eric, you're
shameless?
up.
That
You're
wasn't so shameless. That sounds really cool.
I'm trying to help everybody. I got control of a lot of songs, and I'm gonna.
Well, say your URL again so people hear that. That's cool.
My website is rallenmusic.com, and so this new service is not available through that right now, but you can definitely call me and talk to me about it, and I will tell you all the ins and outs. If you could pay what you were paying now and get a lot more and not have somebody stalk you at your house, then.
That was one time, and I've made amends back. I'm just kidding. I don't know what that means. That sounds really cool. I'm again very excited to announce that I have my lovely website. It's ericvancleave.com. I actually need I'm looking for a few beta testers to work on my website with me. So find me, leave me a message down there, and I'll message you back. I should be up and running in another, I've been saying this for months, but another week or so. 1 week, I'm guessing, should be deal. So I'm excited about that. Haven't done a lot of that. I got a catalog with a lot of current and classic things. And, you know, I'm anxious, you know, even though I'm going to put it on the interweb, I want to talk to, you know, if a director if you're looking for a piece of music or part of a show or an entire show, I'm happy to talk to you instead of you just going and kind of buying something that's on there. I want to make sure it's what you want it to be. And so even though it's sort of a catalog setup, it's really kind of an invitation, kind of a stepping off point, so that we can, you know, help folks get what they want and to find easier, better ways. And by the way, thank you to all of the choral directors, band directors that are dealing with all of this that we're dealing with right now. You have my unending love and respect. If there's anything I can do to make, you know, I've been doing as many as I can fit in. I'm willing to make space. If a virtual clinic is going to make a difference in your world, and I can help you, call me or email me or reach out, and if I can schedule, I'll do it. And I'm happy to do that. And I'm doing a lot of those for just contributing my time to your program, because I know money's not, for many of us, is difficult this year for many of the choral directors. So thank you for what you're doing, choral directors. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting me through so many years. Thanks for doing, you know, thanks for, and again, if you want to reach out, I know any of us would talk to you. Garrett's not very nice in person, but the rest of us, I'm just kidding, Garrett, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's fine. You can text. Then I won't be mean.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be sitting here with you guys.
Well, we'll have to do it again sometime. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.